I always thought my mother was the fragile one, the one who cried when I left for college, who clutched her chest every time I mentioned moving away. But that afternoon, while sorting boxes in her attic, my brother leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't react. Wait until she leaves." I did, and when she finally stepped outside, he pulled out a small envelope, hands trembling. Inside were documents, forged bank papers, a second mortgage, my name, my signature, but not my doing. I stared at the ink, cold flooding my veins. And in that moment, I realized my mother hadn't been protecting me. She'd been preparing to destroy me. The call came at 2:03 a.m., right when I had finally drifted into sleep. After another long day of back-to-back meetings, my phone lit up with Mom on the screen. I hesitated for half a second, just enough for dread to settle in my chest, then answered. "Sarah," her voice trembled. I don't think I'll make it through the night." My heart dropped. "What's wrong? Are you in pain? Should I call someone?" "No," she cut me off, her breath raspy and thin. Just don't leave me alone, please, not tonight." She coughed, delicate and slow, like the sound of someone fading away. I was already grabbing my keys. By the time I reached the freeway, I had convinced myself this was it. The final goodbye. Guilt swallowed me whole. Had I been too distant lately? Too cold? My therapist's voice echoed in my head. Emotional boundaries are not cruelty. But that felt hollow with your mother on her supposed deathbed. I arrived at her house in record time, not even bothering to change out of pajamas. I walked in with panic in my chest, expecting an ambulance or maybe the faint sound of labored breathing. Instead, I was greeted by the smell of cinnamon and the quiet hum of the oven. She was in the kitchen, wearing her robe, making muffins. "Oh," she said, acting surprised. "You came fast." I stared at her. "You said you weren't going to make it." She smiled, casual, brushing flour from her hands. "Well, I didn't know if I would, thought I might collapse." She turned away, humming a tune as if we hadn't just staged a midnight drama over the phone. I didn't respond. I walked upstairs. I needed a second to breathe, to understand what was happening. On instinct, I checked the security camera I had installed last month. I hadn't told her. Something had felt off for a while, and I'd wanted clarity. I watched the footage of the last 2 hours. There she was, around 1:40 a.m., dancing in the living room with her cat. At 1:50, baking. At 2:02, she picked up the phone, dialed, and adjusted her voice before it connected. Then, just before she called me, she whispered to herself, "We delete everything today." I replayed it. "We delete everything today." Her voice was steady, calculated, not weak. I stood still, phone shaking in my hand. "Downstairs," she called. "You want some muffins, sweetheart?" My lips moved, but no sound came out. The next morning, I returned to my apartment. I didn't mention the footage, not yet. I needed to be sure. Maybe she was just dramatic, overly emotional, not malicious, but my gut told me otherwise. I looked around my own apartment, my safe place, the remnants of years spent in silent obedience, stacks of medical bills, hers, never mine, screenshots of bank transfers at odd hours, postponed vacations, canceled job offers, letters from grad schools I never replied to, a framed picture on the wall, me in my cap and gown, but alone. She hadn't come to my graduation, said she didn't want to take attention away from me. At the time, I had believed her. Now I wondered. I opened the closet, pulling out the box labeled Mom. Inside were gifts I had bought for her over the years. Birthday necklaces, spa vouchers, books she said she loved, all unopened, all returned to me under the excuse that they were too expensive or not necessary. I had spent 37 years building my life around the hope that one day she'd say, "Thank you, I see you." Instead, I was beginning to realize that every sacrifice I'd made had vanished into a black hole of manipulation, where love was currency and guilt the price. That night, I returned to her house again. I said I had forgotten my charger. I just needed a reason to see her. She was in the living room, watching TV, laughing. Her voice carried into the hallway as I hovered outside the door. "Make sure the files from the guest laptop are cleared too," she said, "especially the ones with Sarah's name." Another voice replied, "My sister. I already wiped her email folder. Just don't let Mike say anything. He's getting twitchy." "Mike won't talk," Mom said. "He owes us too much." I didn't move. I didn't blink. I stood in the dark hallway, my pulse loud in my ears. Then her voice again. "She still thinks I'm sick. That's the only reason she keeps coming back." I couldn't breathe. And in that moment, it hit me, not like a punch, but like a quiet, precise incision. I had not been loved. I had been harvested. Mike met me at the bottom of the attic stairs without saying a word. He just gestured upward with a flashlight in his hand. His face looked different, harder, like he'd been holding something in for too long. I followed him, my stomach tight with anticipation and dread. The attic was exactly as I remembered it. Dusty beams, boxes labeled in Mom's handwriting, old furniture covered with white sheets. But Mike moved with purpose, walking to the far end behind a stack of suitcases. "It's behind here," he said, not meeting my eyes. I helped him drag the luggage aside. Behind it, hidden in a tear in the insulation, was a small metal box. He pulled it out gently, like it was made of glass, and handed it to me. I opened it. Inside were documents, perfectly stacked. Bank account statements under my name, accounts I'd never opened, a credit card I never applied for, loan applications with my forged signature. One was dated the same week I'd been hospitalized with exhaustion 2 years ago. At the bottom of the stack was a folded note, written in my mother's handwriting. "If she tries to run, use this." The breath left my body like I'd been punched. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Mike rubbed his forehead. "I didn't want you to see this until I was sure." I started looking through her stuff after the whole "I'm dying" call. Something felt wrong. And then I found this. I pulled out another document, a form filed with a private insurance company. My name, diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. Signed, apparently, by a therapist I had never seen. "She put me on a mental illness registry," I said slowly, the words foreign and dry in my mouth. "She's claiming I have multiple personalities." "For disability claims," Mike said. "She's been getting monthly checks for years." I couldn't speak. My vision blurred, and then a photo slipped from the file. It landed face up on the dusty floor, me and a man, hands held, smiles real, standing on a balcony somewhere warm. But I didn't recognize the moment. I didn't remember this photo. I didn't remember him. "Who?" My voice cracked. Mike knelt beside me. "That's Josh." I stared at him, heart pounding. "You don't remember?" "I dated him?" "You were going to marry him," he said. I felt like the room tilted. "No, that can't be. I never got engaged. I don't remember ever being serious with anyone." Mike's mouth was a hard line. "You were, 2 years ago. You wore his ring. You brought him to Thanksgiving." "No." My voice was rising now. That never happened. Mike reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He showed me a photo. Thanksgiving, our kitchen. Me standing beside Josh. The same man from the attic photo. Same smile. Same ring on my finger. The image hit like a slow earthquake. Small cracks forming, spreading. "What happened to him?" I whispered. Mike sat down beside me, folding his hands. "He left. He said you changed, that you were anxious all the time, couldn't sleep, had mood swings. He thought it was something medical. He asked Mom about it." I turned to him slowly. "And?" She told him you'd had a breakdown, that you'd stopped taking medication, that you were unstable. She gave him evidence. Emails, doctor's notes, stuff she faked. My stomach turned. "He tried to talk to you, but every time, you'd just shut down. And she was giving you stuff, Sarah. In your tea, sleeping meds, anxiety meds, just enough to keep you fragile." I covered my mouth with both hands. "She drugged me." Mike nodded. "You weren't crazy. You were being chemically managed." For the first time in years, I felt myself crumble. Not just from betrayal, but from the terrifying realization that parts of my life, months of it, were a foggy, poisoned blur. "I thought I had memory problems," I whispered. "I thought I was just overworked." "She made you think that," he said. "She built your entire reality." I began to sob, ugly and loud, like a child. My shoulders shook. I couldn't stop. All those years I thought I was unstable, too emotional, too sensitive. I was being quietly destroyed from the inside out, by the one person I trusted most. I curled into myself, fists clenched against the attic floor. Mike didn't try to hug me. He just sat there, quietly, beside me. Maybe for the first time in our lives, he understood what it meant to be powerless. And maybe, in his own way, he was trying to say sorry. The silence stretched between us, filled only by dust and grief. And still, through all that pain, one question echoed in my mind, cold and sharp. If I can't trust my memories, then who the hell am I? I didn't confront my mother. Not yet. Rage is a terrible strategist, and I'd learned the hard way that I couldn't afford another move based on instinct, not with someone who had already rewritten entire years of my life. So I waited. I planned. I became quiet, deliberately quiet, the kind of quiet that draws no suspicion. At night, I spread out everything on my dining table: documents, timelines, photos, bank records, copies of medical bills I supposedly owed. I made a map, names, arrows, question marks. Who knew what? Who benefited? Who kept quiet? It was bigger than her. It had to be. So I started reaching out. At first, I contacted Mrs. Langley, my mother's old friend from church, who had abruptly moved away 2 years ago. I framed it gently, just a question about old memories, nothing accusatory. But the pause on the other end of the line said everything. "She still does it?" she finally asked. I hoped she'd changed. That night, Mrs. Langley forwarded me emails, messages from my mother, guilting her into lending money, then blaming her for hurting Sarah's mental health when she asked for it back. She had tried to warn others, but was met with silence. I kept digging. I tracked down an old neighbor who had watched me grow up, a nurse who once worked at my mother's clinic, a loan officer at the local bank. Each conversation opened a door. Each door led to a hallway full of more secrets. Within a week, I had assembled something terrifying, a network of survivors. People like me, used, manipulated, discarded. Some had been guilted into financial ruin, others emotionally blackmailed. One woman told me she'd lost custody of her daughter after my mother wrote a character reference, painting her as unstable. We created a private chat group, quiet at first, then stories poured in, raw, shameful, eerily similar. We compared notes. We cross-referenced timelines. My mother wasn't just controlling, she was methodical, strategic. One night, while scrolling through messages, I saw a new notification. A private message from one of the women, someone who had been mostly silent until now. "I can't talk much," it said, "but you should know, your sister is not who you think she is." I froze. I typed, "What do you mean?" No reply. The next day, I drove to my sister's house. I didn't text, I didn't call. I needed to see her face. She opened the door, surprised to see me. She always looked polished, hair just right, blouse tucked, smile curated. But today, the corners of her mouth trembled. "I think we need to talk," I said. She didn't invite me in. She stepped aside silently. Her living room was spotless, just like always, a framed family photo on the mantel. Mom, me, her, Mike. We looked happy, lies captured in a frame. I sat across from her. "What did you do?" She blinked fast. "Sarah, I don't—" "Stop," I said. "I'm not here to guess. I already know. I just want to hear you say it." For a moment, she was still. Then her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to be next," she whispered. "What?" "I watched what she did to you. I saw how she chipped away at you year after year. And I knew if I didn't play along, she'd turn that on me. She always said I wasn't strong like you." "That doesn't excuse it." "I know." She wiped her cheek. "I helped fake the therapist letters. I emailed Josh, told him you'd stopped taking meds. I even deleted his last message to you." I stared at her, numb. "I didn't know she was drugging you," she said. "I swear I didn't know that part. I thought you were just fragile. You didn't think maybe that had something to do with everything she'd done to me." She folded into herself, small and trembling. "She said if I stayed quiet, she'd put me in the will, said I'd finally get something for being loyal." I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I didn't, because in that moment I saw the truth. We had both been broken, just in different directions. She had become her accomplice out of fear. I had become her puppet out of love. Neither of us had won. "You hurt me," I said quietly. "I know. I don't forgive you. I didn't expect you to." Silence settled between us, thick and sharp. But I saw her now, not as a villain, not entirely. She was a reflection of what I could have become had I chosen silence over resistance. And that realization hurt more than anything. The invitation was simple. Christmas Eve, 7 p.m., family only. I sent it via email with a polite note that I would be hosting this year, that I wanted to reconnect. It was the kind of gesture Mom loved. Tradition, appearances, the illusion of closeness. She responded within minutes. "Of course, looking forward to it." I cleaned the apartment until it sparkled, but not because I wanted to impress anyone. I needed control. I needed this setting to be mine. I prepared the living room carefully. Chairs angled toward the TV, snacks arranged in a circle, drinks chilled, lighting soft but sharp enough for faces to be seen clearly. The video file sat ready on a flash drive, hidden beneath the table. They arrived in small clusters: my sister, her husband, Mike, Mom, 2 aunts, a cousin I barely remembered. Everyone smiling too wide, speaking too loud, pretending this was just another festive evening. I watched them hug, laugh, drink wine. I watched her. She wore emerald green, a shade she always said made her feel powerful. Her earrings sparkled like truth never had. We ate. We passed around store-bought cookies. At exactly 8:15, I stood and tapped my glass. "I have something I want to share," I said. "A little trip down memory lane." Mom blinked. "A slideshow?" she asked, already amused. "Something like that," I said, inserting the drive into the TV. The screen flickered to life. First, a childhood photo of me and Mike, grinning in the backyard. Then, slowly, the shift. Audio clips of phone calls. My voice, her voice. "You know how she gets when she's off her meds. Make sure you cancel her appointment. She'll never leave. She owes us too much." Then security footage. Her baking muffins the night of her death scare. Her whispering to herself about deleting files. The camera caught it all. The room went silent. Then murmurs, shuffling, a dropped glass. Mom stood. This is twisted," she stammered. "She's ill. She's been unstable for years." She turned to the others. "You know how she is. We've all seen it." And for a moment I felt it, that sting of doubt, the familiar pull of gaslight. But then someone stood. It was Aunt Linda. Quiet, nervous Aunt Linda, who never took sides. "I believe her," she said. "I've seen how you speak to her. I've seen how scared she is of you." My mother froze. "I'm sorry," Linda continued, "but she's not lying. I'm a witness. I just never thought it would come to this." For a long second, no one moved. Then Mom laughed. "You're both insane. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're doing." I didn't respond, because I already had. 3 days later, I received the papers. She was suing me for defamation, for emotional damage, for invasion of privacy. The irony was breathtaking. "You should have known she'd fight back," Mike said when I called him. "I did," I replied, "but this is war." And for a second, I thought he sounded proud. We met at a diner that night. Neutral ground. I needed to know where he stood, really stood. He ordered black coffee, no small talk. Then he slid a small USB across the table. "What's this?" He didn't look at me. "Everything, every conversation, every phone call she made to me. From the beginning." I stared at him. "You recorded her?" "I was supposed to spy on you," he said flatly. "She told me to track your mood, your behavior, anything unusual. Said it was for your protection." "And you?" "I did. At first, I was scared. I owed her too much. But then I saw what she was doing to you, and to me. And I realized, maybe we both needed protection." My throat tightened. "Why are you giving this to me now?" "Because I was wrong, and because it's the only way I know how to make it right." I took the USB. He finally looked at me. "You were never crazy, Sarah. But she made me believe you were, and that's on me." I didn't forgive him, not yet, but I felt something shift. Because sometimes the person who betrays you is also the only one willing to burn with you. It started with a phone call from a detective. He was calm, methodical, too polite. He said there had been multiple reports, that the evidence I submitted, along with testimony from Mike, Aunt Linda, and others, was enough to open an investigation. I sat on my couch in silence, fingers curled around a lukewarm mug of coffee, nodding at things I couldn't process: fraud, identity theft, insurance manipulation, falsified medical records. It sounded surreal. It sounded like it had happened to someone else, but it hadn't. A week later, they froze her accounts. 2 investigators showed up at her house with a warrant. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I saw the footage later on the news. A woman in emerald green being escorted, confused but composed, waving to neighbors like it was all some misunderstanding. A reporter asked if she had anything to say. She smiled. "My daughter has always been dramatic." That line echoed online, but so did the rest. Within days, blogs picked up the story. Some called it the unraveling of a perfect matriarch. Others spun it into think pieces about emotional abuse and covert manipulation. A headline popped up on my feed one morning. "I loved her until her mother broke her." Josh. He had written it, raw, unfiltered, honest. He recounted how we had met, how we'd fallen in love, how slowly, so slowly, things shifted, how I changed, how confused he felt, how guilty he still was for walking away. I read it 3 times, each time slower. I didn't cry, I didn't smile. I just closed my laptop and sat in silence. Some wounds didn't bleed anymore. They just pulsed. That evening, a new email appeared. Subject: "We'd like to option your story." A publisher, a legitimate one. They wanted to buy the rights, said it had commercial and emotional weight, said it had potential. Potential. That word felt wrong in my mouth. I didn't reply. The next week was a blur of media requests, legal paperwork, and strangers messaging me online. Some with stories of their own, others with judgment sharp enough to draw blood. I was a hero to some, a disgrace to others. She should have kept it private. She ruined her family for attention. Who records their own mother? And yet the case moved forward. The state was building a file thick with years of deceit. And she hired a lawyer, but her confidence cracked more with every hearing. Still, nothing prepared me for what came next. I received a letter from the facility. She'd been moved, voluntarily, they said, to a psychiatric institution. Her behavior had become erratic. She'd started repeating things, forgetting names, talking to people who weren't there. At first, I thought it was a trick. Another performance, another weapon. But the doctor called to confirm. Her mind was deteriorating, rapidly. Possibly early onset dementia, possibly something else. They weren't sure. I drove there one afternoon, not because I needed closure, not because I wanted revenge. I just needed to see her. The halls were quiet, sterile, padded with the kind of silence that made thoughts louder. She sat in a chair by the window, staring out. Her hair was unbrushed. Her hands trembled slightly. I walked closer. She turned her head. Her eyes met mine, blank. Nothing, no flicker of recognition, no guilt, no defense. Just absence. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I wanted to say her name. I wanted her to say mine. Instead, she looked past me and smiled at something invisible. I sat down across from her. We didn't speak. Minutes passed. I thought about everything she'd done. Every lie, every pill. Every time she'd held my hand while twisting the knife deeper. And now she was gone. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. She'd escaped justice, not through legal maneuvering, but through mental decay. She would never face a courtroom, never hear a verdict. I stared at her, not with anger, not even sorrow. Just a quiet question growing inside me like a fog. If the person who destroyed your life no longer remembers it, are they still your enemy? I stood up. She didn't notice. I left without a word. I changed my number 2 days after leaving the hospital. I deleted my social media, shut down the private email account tied to the survivors group, turned off the notifications from media outlets, and filtered the calls through an answering service I never planned to check. The world wanted a story. I didn't want to tell it anymore. Not because it wasn't true, but because I was done living inside it. Silence became my new armor, not the suffocating silence I had grown up with, the kind that hid things. This one was different. It was spacious. It gave me room to breathe, to move, to exist without being seen through anyone's filter but my own. I bought a small house outside the city. It had a garden that hadn't been touched in years, stubborn soil and weeds with roots like wires. I liked it. It didn't pretend to be perfect. I spent mornings outside with my hands in the dirt, unlearning the urgency that had once dictated every decision. I stopped checking the clock. I started sleeping through the night. Some days I barely spoke a word. Not out of depression, but because there was nothing I needed to explain. I kept a journal, not for publication, just pages of thoughts, some angry, some grateful, most scattered like gravel. But it helped me put weight down. In early spring, I met Ava. She was 6, small, quiet, with dark eyes that watched everything and gave nothing back. Her caseworker said she'd been in 3 homes in 10 months. The last one returned her because she didn't bond. She doesn't trust anyone, the woman told me, almost apologetically. She has some behaviors. I remember looking at Ava as she sat silently across from me, coloring something that didn't look like anything. I said, "That's okay. I don't trust anyone either." She didn't look up, but she didn't stop coloring either. 2 months later, she moved in. There was no big moment, no emotional breakthrough, just small things. The way she started leaving the door cracked at night instead of closed, how she began eating the crusts of her sandwiches. One day she handed me a drawing, a scribbled stick figure with orange hair and a purple dress. I asked, "Who's this?" She said, "You." I nodded, "Thanks." She shrugged like it wasn't a big deal, but it was. I never asked about her mother. She never asked about mine. And that felt right. The life I built wasn't dramatic or glamorous. I taught Ava how to plant carrots. I taught myself how to bake. We painted the kitchen cabinets the wrong shade of blue and didn't fix it. We took walks. We got rained on. We didn't perform for anyone. And slowly, I started to feel like I had left something behind. Not escaped it, outgrown it. One quiet afternoon, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, a blank sheet of paper in front of me. No title, no date, just space. I picked up a pen and began writing. "Dear Mom, I'm not sending this. That's not what it's for. This is for me. You won't ever know what it cost me to understand you, to finally, completely, and irreversibly see you for who you are. You won't hear the pain in my voice or see the nights I sat on the floor, holding old pictures and wondering which version of you was real. Maybe none of them. But I do owe you something, and I want to say it, if only once. Thank you for teaching me exactly what not to become. Thank you for showing me how power can be used as a weapon, so I could learn to use mine as protection. Thank you for withholding love, so that when I finally gave it freely, I knew what it meant. You were my beginning, but you will not be my ending." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I didn't use. That evening, Ava and I sat on the back porch, watching the sun slip behind the hills. She leaned against my side, quiet as usual. A breeze picked up, and for a moment, everything smelled like earth and hope and peace. She asked, "Do you have a mom?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the sky, the deep orange folding into violet. and thought of the woman sitting in a white room somewhere, staring out a window she didn't recognize. Then I looked at Ava, her small hands gripping the edge of the blanket, eyes half-lidded with sleep. "I used to," I said softly, "but now I'm the mom." She didn't say anything, she just curled closer. And for the first time in my life, I felt free, not because justice had been served or stories had been told, but because I had chosen not to carry the weight anymore. I wasn't running, I wasn't surviving, I was living.